The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Let's listen as Lorraine Lapointe, coach, therapist, educator, speaker, and founder of Head Heart Synergy, brings together another enlightened guest to inspire and motivate us to move forward, achieve our dreams and desires, so that we experience midlife awakening.
And I'm your host, Lorraine Lapointe. Today we'll enjoy another candid conversation that reveals how to bring back a sense of balance and how to find forward focus. Today, take just a few moments to join us as we explore the possibilities and the perspectives that provide us with greater inner peace, power, passion, and purpose. Because that's what I call living at the edge of fulfillment in a midlife awakening.
Well, hello and welcome to all of our audience around the world. It's wonderful to know how well we're being followed and enjoyed in so many places. And today we're talking about how the common denominator for that is you. So I wonder, have you ever met someone who seems like they can see into your soul? Or when was the last time you truly allowed yourself to be seen? Or for that matter, when have you allowed yourself to speak in vulnerability from your heart? Because when we're willing to be truly present, we experience the sense of clarity in that moment as answers can come from deep within us. Often it's the tiniest of a whisper, and you can only be heard when we allow ourselves to get quiet and still. This week, I have the honor of being present with a guest who, and I was a guest actually. I presented for two groups of women this week who were shown how to become more present so we could connect with our wiser inner self. And right now we're in a time of midlife awakening. When we begin to listen carefully, pay attention, because this part of ourself wants to stand up, become strong, more empowering about who we are. And that's why today's show focuses on three important quotes. The first is from Marianne Williamson. And you might be familiar with this one. She said, "Our deepest fear is not that we are weak. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." And the question becomes, what are we doing about that and with that? And then a second quote by Nelson Mandela. And often the first quote is attributed to Nelson, but it was actually Marianne Williamson. But Nelson Mandela said, "As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." And so by you becoming present with yourself, even just for the time that you're on the show listening today, you help to liberate others. And the third quote to keep in mind today is from Edmund Hillary, the man who first climbed Mount Everest, who discovered that it's not the mountain that is to be conquered, but ourselves. So today, don't dismiss the importance of this authentic voice inside. This is the one that speaks to you with love, with understanding and compassion. It lifts your spirit and urges you to go mindfully forward, towards your dreams. Because what I found is that my own powerful inner self never causes me confusion or reminds me of my past mistakes. It never makes me doubt myself or feel unworthy, unlike any of the 10 other critical voices that are often in our minds, those toxic voices that I talk about as the inner saboteurs. And what I shared in the presentations that I did this week is that when I experience that pure connection to self, it shows me that the common denominator in all things is me. So that means it's you too. And it shows where in life we need to be more open, more vulnerable, more authentic. And it enables us to speak from our heart. So, by the way, those who I haven't met before, I am Lorraine Lapointe, and I have the privilege of working with many compassionate, service-minded women who've often given so much to so many for so long that they find themselves at like a crossroads in their life. They're asking, what's next? Or is this all there is? They wonder if it's time that it was time for life to give back so that they can begin to receive what they most desire. Because what I've learned is what they really want is to eliminate that sense of self-sacrifice, that self-doubt and self-sabotage. What they truly want is to explore ways to, to dial down our toxic inner self-talk, those voices that are judgmental, that cause us to feel ashamed or to feel criticized or even afraid of our own success. Instead, they want to strengthen self-command, to feel passionate and purposefully hear the wise inner voice that speaks our truth. So in this show today, we encourage you to see how the common denominator is you. And this is the time to empower yourself by putting away the fears of being judged or found less than. And today you're encouraged to give yourself the time to be fully present. Today's tremendously gifted guest knows that the longer you listen to and believe your true inner voice, the stronger you become. And she's overcome many challenges. And we're going to hear about how her strengths were tested to grow her great inner self. And to celebrate with you today, I'm giving you the gift of this time to mark you and celebrate. I'll post a link to a quiz so that you can easily tell what's the number one focus that would improve your life satisfaction score. And it's another way that you can prove the common denominator is you. You can participate in this show. And anytime something speaks to your heart today, either comment or like or share your thoughts or questions, because in the Edge of Fulfillment show, you create the opportunity for my company, Head Heart Synergy, to make life better for someone in the world. By commenting, liking, and sharing, you help me to help someone else who needs access to clean, clear water for the day, wherever it's needed most, through b1g1.com. And this means that when you comment or you ask a question or you listen to our podcast, you can help someone in the world to live better. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for helping me to help others. And we have already surpassed our goal that was originally like 2,000 positive impacts. And now we are moving further and further towards bigger and bigger goals. Are we ambitious? Absolutely. I think we can make it though. Don't you? So let's move towards our bigger goal right now. Simply add yes, we can in the comments, and or say hello and watch those freshwater days increase. Because each week we broadcast in all kinds of places and through different social media platforms. And your thoughts and feelings and questions are important. And our wonderful producer, Roxy, she's working very hard behind the scenes. She helps us to see when you add that hashtag and the word question, so that we can answer your questions and reply to your comments and shape the program into something that's really most beneficial for you. So I want to say thanks, Roxy, for doing that. And each week here on the Edge of Fulfillment show, we are on w4wn.com and Talk for TV. We're also found in the Head Heart Synergy Facebook fan page. And we run a contest each week with different amazing prizes. Today's guest is supporting you with the opportunity to win a printed copy of her book called Thriving, Not Surviving: The Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment. And to be entered into that contest, all you do is listen for the 5 inspirational words. And at the end of the show, we'll ask you to put those words in the chat, or you'll be able to email me, just like Heather Reason, who had all 5 special words from last week. Heather Reason is the winner of the $50 shopping experience. Good morning, Angeline. The shopping experience on the Black Widow Market which is sponsored by our guest from last week, Marie Copps, as she helps bring an end to child trafficking. So congratulations, Heather, and thank you for stepping up and helping with this most worthy cause. And could it be your turn this week? You can enter to win simply by remembering to jot down the words as we say them on the show and put them on the in the chat at the end. And you've already heard the first word for today, so jot this one down somewhere. The first word is thriving. So stay with us as we take this short break. Go ahead, send an invitation to your friends and family who can benefit from exploring and empowering themselves, because as I said, this show is all about the common denominator, which is you. And who couldn't use that? So invite us to the Edge of Fulfillment on the Head Heart Synergy Facebook fan page, or W4WN, that's the Women for Women Network Radio and Talk for TV. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Did you know video is the future on content? There are 3 good reasons why video is the future of content. Number 1, videos are often more engaging than simple pictures or music alone. Number 2, it's much easier to tell your story through video. Number 3, because we love to watch video, they go viral much faster. Hey, notice you're still watching right now. See how well it works. Next time we can play your video here instead. Ask me how. Shine online on Talk 4 TV and W4WN Radio.
Hey, are you looking for a brighter future? Wishing for greater calm, clarity, and confidence? What if you knew an inside job was the answer? Your mission: stop the inner burn. Gain mental fitness so you get more out of life. Imagine in about 15 minutes a day for just 6 weeks. Come on, we'll show you how. Don't miss it. Just go to www.lorraine.gives/M-Fitness and join us right now.
Oh, welcome back. Let's do a quick recap for those of who are listening at the moment. The contest this week, our guest is provided a printed copy of her book, and the book is entitled Thriving, Not Surviving: The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment. And we've already heard the first of the 5 words that you'll need to put in the comments at the end of the show. As a reminder, the first word was thriving. So all you need to do now is listen for the other words here on the Edge of Fulfillment on W4WN. That's the Women for Women Network Radio and Talk for TV. And I'm eager to welcome today's guest because Gina Gardiner is a multiple #1 international best-selling author. She's a motivational speaker. She's an empowerment and transformational leadership coach and trainer. She's had 30 plus years experience helping people achieve and sustain both personal and professional happiness, success, fulfillment, and greater insight into how the common denominator is you. She is also the founder of something called Genuinely You. Gina uses her unique approach to life, developed while she ran her award-winning organization, mostly from a wheelchair. So I'm hoping she'll give us more about her story about that. And Gina hosts something called Leadership for Life, which is on W4 CY TV and radio. That's our sister show. And she's a regular radio and podcast guest. So her mission is to positively impact millions of people over the next 5 years based on integrity, compassion, and courage to live life. But you know, I'm not going to keep talking about her because I really want to welcome her to the show today. Welcome, Gina. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And thank you for having me on the show. It's such a privilege and a pleasure.
Oh, and I could go on and on and on about you because I just love our conversations. And I know that you love watching people in helping them grow in confidence and expertise. And you help them enlighten and evolve. But you know what? I'm going to stop talking because I want to know where you'd like to begin your story.
Well, you talk about we are each the common denominator in our own life. From the moment we're born until the moment we die, we take ourselves into every situation. And so it's so important that we actually own ourselves, that we take radical responsibility for our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, our actions, and our words, because then we are stepping into our genuine power. No one can make us unhappy. Nobody can colour the quality of our lives unless we choose to allow them to do that. And when you do step into your genuine power, it's not about diminishing somebody else. When you step into your genuine power, in fact, you see the potential in others and want to nurture it. So for yourself and for those around you, recognizing that you are the common denominator and that you can take responsibility for you makes all the difference.
And I know that that was a lesson that you learned for yourself, not in an easy way, was it?
No, I had a ski accident in 1983, quite a significant one, fell about 150, 200 feet down a mountain.
Oh my.
And to cut a long story short, I spent between 1987, when I started to use a wheelchair at work, and I still do use a wheelchair, but these days I can walk short distances following, I've had an internal spinal stimulator fitted. But whilst I ran my award-winning school, it was mostly from a wheelchair. And the gift in that was, because I couldn't physically get into the classrooms, I had to find a way of getting people to take radical responsibility for their own performance and a shared responsibility for the team. It was incredibly successful. We were on the best 100 schools in England list twice during my tenure. And the principles of that were then used to help many other schools and teachers, and since 2004, many businesses and individuals, because it actually doesn't matter whether you're talking about school or what sort of business or within your family or within society, actually the same rules apply. And it always starts with you. You can't lead other people effectively unless you lead yourself. And taking radical responsibility for whether, you're moody or whether you have to be seen to be right, highly overrated actually, or, how you speak to people or not. All of those things are within your grasp. Moment by moment, we make choices. Everything that we do or not is actually our choice, and every choice has consequences. But the interesting thing is, it's often when you don't make an active choice, when you allow that habitual thinking, which for 95% of people is where they spend most of their time, when you let things drift, often the consequences are most far-reaching. And so for me, it is, how do you become the journalist of your own life? How do you really examine what goes on moment by moment and recognize that if there are patterns of behavior, patterns of relationships, patterns of, good or bad things happening to you, then look to yourself first. Because if you're the common denominator and the pattern keeps coming, then you have to think, well, what is it I'm doing or saying or not doing or not saying, or the way in which I say or do it? Because that's going to be the gold, really. When you recognize that, then you have an awareness of it, then you have a choice to do something about it, or not, of course.
Or not. Well, and I can be vulnerable here and say in my own life, my own pattern that I needed to recognize was that I was bringing in betrayal into my life over and over and over again, in relationships, in business situations, in just day-to-day existence, and how and how I was attracting that sense of betrayal, because part of me, which is a saboteur that needed to be right, that needed to be rational, that needed to have, you know, things achieved the way I thought they should be achieved. And all I was doing at that point was inviting others to opt out of being in alignment with me.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we all have that blueprint of how we think life should be. You know, my parents didn't love me. Well, the likelihood is they didn't love me in exactly the way that I thought they ought to. So when a parent was being, clients will often say, you know, my parents were so critical, nothing was ever good enough. But when you perhaps look at a shift of perspective and ask the question, is it possible that they were being critical because they wanted the best for you, and that they were just being very clumsy? After all, children don't come with a manual, do they? You know,
wish they did.
And of course, the manual you get for your first child isn't going to work for the second or the third, and so that our perception becomes our reality. But our perception is not the only reality. And if you shift the perception, then you often shift the belief or the reality. You know, beliefs, I'm sure you've talked about this in your show before, they're installed very often really early on, and they're very rarely challenged. So if your belief is that you're not loved, and therefore you're not lovable, then you look for evidence that demonstrates that you're not loved and not lovable. And of course, you interpret everything through your beliefs, and so you'll make the evidence fit, even if there's another completely, probably more rational explanation. And that's why the common denominator bit is so important, because if you see those patterns and you're aware of those patterns and understand how important those patterns can be, then you do have the opportunity to change those patterns. And you gave a beautiful example of, you know, people, yourself and others, who believe that they are going to be betrayed, that, you know, people will betray you. And the trouble with that is that then you start to behave in a way that expects betrayal, which in turn has an impact on the other person, who is probably also behaving habitually. And so one triggers the other, who triggers back the first one, and you end up with this dance which triggers things into more and more challenging situations. And both are completely oblivious to the reality of what's going on. Once you are aware of the pattern, then you can start to understand, why is it there? Is it helpful? Is it not? And whether you're going to choose to deal with it or not, and give yourself permission to forgive if that's what needs to happen, to let go of the past and to allow your present to be more joyful, more successful, and your future as a result to be so much more successful and happy and fulfilled.
Such wisdom. And I'm hoping this is landing for our listeners and our watchers at the moment, because somebody said to me not long ago, what is the meaning of life? Like, what's the whole point of this life? I mean, they were experiencing challenges and very much in the victim mode. Yeah. Everything happens to me. Nothing's good. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to help me. All the victim statements, of course.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that lack of ability to even hear how those statements are self-fulfilling and self-perpetuating.
What you focus on, sorry to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say, what you said was so profound. Like, so I'm, you know, I'd love to hear for our listeners and our watchers, if this is landing for you in some way, just throw a yes in the chat, or me too, or something, so that we know that we're talking about something that's resonant. Go ahead.
I can say this business of, am I a victim or am I a hero? or heroin, we write our own life story, don't we? How we respond, how we interact with one another, with ourselves first and foremost, because the most important relationship you will ever have with anybody, and the most consistent relationship you will have with anybody, is the relationship you have with you. So there are so many patterns of behavior. So, for example, do you have a different set of criteria that you judge everybody else and you judge yourself? So if it was quite good or okay for you, but if somebody else did it, that's brilliant, fantastic, well done. You have to ask yourself the question, is that fair? If you treat everybody else well, but you don't look after yourself, and you're at the bottom of your list of priorities, then you're never going to have as much energy and just resource to help other people. I've got a glass of water here. If I drink that glass of water, it will very quickly be empty. But if I imagine a tap constantly filling it and I use the overflow, then I'm never going to run out. And so self-care is I'll give people the overflow and not run on empty, because then I can help more people. The patterns that we use in terms of, do I say yes to other people because I'm frightened that if I say no, I'll upset them, and then I'm rushing around like a lunatic trying to do everything, and my own stuff gets done, late at night. You have to ask yourself the question, what's that pattern about? So for me, recognizing those patterns that get in the way, the procrastinators, those people who are constantly going for the next bright, shiny thing, the people who, well, if I don't try, then I haven't failed. We have got so many self-sabotage patterns that once you are aware of them, you then have the opportunity to give yourself permission to deal with them or not. And many people, they're not aware, so they can't do anything. They don't understand what's going on. They're aware that something's wrong, but they haven't quite worked out what it is and why. And then having done that, there are still then those people who don't give themselves permission to deal with it because either they feel they don't deserve it, or they can hear somebody else's voice in their head saying, you're never going to make anything of yourself, or who do you think you are? And so it's about giving yourself permission to be the best version of you, and to recognize that the best version of you today is the foundation of the best version of you tomorrow or next week or the following. And it's an ongoing evolution. You're never done. We're lifelong carriers of a student card. This life is about learning, as far as I'm concerned. For me, it's two things. It's about learning. It's about experiencing life to the full and being in the moment and enjoying that moment, and recognizing that when difficult things happen, and I've had my fair of challenges, learned to walk twice as an adult, recognizing that actually you learn more through challenges than you do when life is going well. And it's not the challenge that defines you, but what you do with it. And so recognizing that however difficult life, and let's face it, the last 18 months, many people have found life incredibly difficult.
Incredibly difficult.
For some people, that will be the making of them, because they'll have recognized in life what's important, and they'll focus on what they can do rather than what they can't. And there'll be others who will be a victim to what's gone on and will never get past it's not fair, it's poor me, why has it happened to me?
Well, as Erica just pointed out, we're constantly learning. We
are
never
indeed.
stop.
No, it's, for me, that's what we're here to do. We never stop learning if we're open to it.
Well, and that's what I think is the meaning of life as well. I mean, people say to me, oh, I've had a life full of challenges. Well, you can either say I've had a life full of challenges, or you can say I've had a life full of opportunities. And learn or grow.
Absolutely. And what I don't want to come across is, Walter Mitty, like, Pollyanna, that,
Yes.
there are days when life is blooming hard, when it feels dark and you feel as if you're trying to swim your way through tar.
It's a lovely metaphor. Yes, I've had many of those days myself. Joyfully, though, those are the days that give me the juxtaposition about joy, love, all of the positives, because I've found that I can't appreciate the positive emotions unless I've allowed myself to feel the depths of the not so comfortable emotions.
I think that's so true. I think, when I'm working with clients, I often talk about having above the line or below the line. And you can use it in a number of contexts. So behaviors that are in line with core values are above the line. And we'll all dip below the line at times because we're human. And it's not that we'll never dip below the line, but it's how quickly do you recognize the pattern of dipping below the line, and how quickly do you get yourself out of the trough. And that's also true above the line in terms of your mood. And your mood is not necessarily dependent upon everything going well. But I'll give you an example. When I came out, I had 2 failed back surgeries during my time and my tenure as principal of the school. And when I came out the second time, I was back at school within 4 days, having been in hospital for weeks. And people said to me, "Aren't you brave?" And I said, "No, I'm not. If I stayed at home, if somebody hadn't left me out a cup, filled the kettle, put the tea or coffee in the cup, I couldn't make myself a drink. But I could go to school, use my mouth, my brain, my hands. There were people on tap to make me a cup of coffee, and I could be effective." And I think for me, that's the thing, is even on the darkest day, you can be grateful, and be grateful for the cup of tea or for a hot shower or for the outside world. As I'm doing this, I'm looking at my courtyard and it's full of summer flowers. And I can be grateful for the natural wonder of the world. Even on the darkest day, there are things to be grateful for. Even on the darkest day, you know that tomorrow will be better. And Erica said, learning from our experience to move forward and upwards. So true. Because I think many people are so frightened of failure that they don't engage. And life isn't a spectator sport. You get a very different experience as a spectator. The Olympics are on as we speak. And you think of an Olympian being absolutely dedicated to be the best sports person. Just imagine what quality of life we would have if we were as dedicated to be the best version of us. And we don't even have to get off the settee to do it, which is, in my case, probably a good thing.
I was just going to say, and that's where opportunity abounds. I mean,
absolutely.
If you're present in the moment, what is there for you in the moment? And I know we can't always live in the moment because our mind goes to the past or our mind goes to the future quite naturally. But if you can take a few seconds, a few times a day, and just get present with yourself and appreciate what's there and make a choice.
It's all about choice. And one of the things, that we are moving into a new era of consciousness, in my opinion. And I think many people are aware either that there is a shift or that there is a huge need for a shift. And for me, I think that those people who are waking up and recognizing that they have a purpose, which is to help and support and serve others, are now at that watershed, if you like. You've got a choice. You can carry on doing what you've always done in the belief that, who am I? I'm only small. I can't actually make a difference. Or you can choose to recognize, actually, you can make a huge difference moment by moment in the choices that you make. Whether you choose to smile at someone as you walk past them in the street. You don't know if that person is the only person that they've actually had any human contact with. whether you are kind in your words, whether you forgive, none of those things cost anything, but they are in your power to give as a gift to yourself and to others. And I do believe that we are moving into a time where integrity, compassion, and the courage to do what's right rather than what's easy is so important. And Erica's talked about belief is important. Everything is predicated on our beliefs, and our belief about ourselves, relationships, other people, money. That's a great one. How many people are struggling financially because they believe that money is the root of all evil, or it's difficult, or they don't deserve it? But their behaviors will be based on those beliefs. And if you look at again, back to patterns of behavior, work with many people who've got money problems, and then you look at their spending pattern, that they'll go and buy, things to make them feel better that they can't afford, that sit in the wardrobe or sit at the, in a cupboard that they don't use, that they will drink heavily or smoke heavily, and then haven't got enough money for the things that they want to do. So the patterns of our behavior, and I'm not making light of people who are struggling financially. Please don't think that, because I'm not. But if you have the belief in yourself that actually, do you know what, I'm going to find a job. I'm going to find a job that I enjoy. But to start with, I'll just find a job, and I'll use that as the platform to get a better job, one that I enjoy even more. And I'm reminded of a story that was in a book by Johann Hari, all about depression. Brilliant book if you get the opportunity to read it. And he was talking to a guy who was he mixed paint, and he mixed it for 8 hours a day in his paint store, the paint store. And he was desperately depressed and unhappy. And Johann said to him, "What would you really like to do?" And he said, I'd like to take people on fishing trips. And he said, "Is that a possibility?" He said, "Well, I've got part shares in a boat. I could probably do it." And he said, "Why don't you?" "I wouldn't be able to afford the Mercedes in the drive."
Choices. The other thing I'd like to add about the beliefs piece is often I found that we carry with us intergenerational beliefs.
Yeah.
And a lot of the work that I've been called to do at the moment is on past life explorations.
Yeah.
So, for example, my grandparents were not well off. Yeah. And their beliefs colored very much my mother's beliefs, which colored my beliefs. But more than that, when you go back and do some exploration, even into what we call past life, you find that you took a vow of poverty. And just because you've passed on from that life doesn't mean the vow disappears. No. And I've worked with clients who have actually released themselves from the beliefs around these things, and from the deep-seated vows, curses, those kinds of things that color our thinking, that we aren't. You said earlier, that color our thinking and we don't even know they're there. It's like a fish does not know it's swimming in water. So when we become aware, suddenly we're at choice.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because part of this greater consciousness, I think, is we are being given the opportunity to heal past hurts, to deal with old karma, to recognize that because those beliefs have been perpetuated generation after generation, that they don't need to continue, particularly when they are holding you back, that they're damaging.
Yeah.
And
it's funny because I had a client who was also in a wheelchair, and I'm just relating this now as we're speaking. She was also in a wheelchair, but she was in excruciating pain for most of her life. She was paraplegic. And we did some work with her, and she discovered that she had been a Roman officer Rome way back 2,000 years ago, and she had crucified thousands of people. And at the end of her life, as a life review, she vowed that she would atone for all the suffering she had caused. Well, she'd had many lives full of suffering, including this one. And when she finally released that, the pain went away.
It doesn't surprise me. The power of these old patterns or old just contracts, if you like.
Yeah, that's a great word for it. It's contract. Contracted.
And so often they've continued long after they have any real value, because once you've learned the lesson, then it's time to move on. Put it right if you can, but if it's a past life, then it's very difficult to do. But what you can do is she could pay it forward by being kind, being compassionate, being someone who would really choose to live a life of, I don't mean service in the sense of penury, but service in the sense of making a positive difference to people rather than suffering, because her suffering does no good to anybody else. And the likelihood has actually had an impact on her family and the people who love her. Whereas if you pay it forward and you recognize, okay, in a past life, I may have done this, but actually I'm choosing. And that's, for me, that's where the radical responsibility, I am choosing to use that as a platform to move forward. Now, I'm conscious of some of the remarks. I think it was Erica who said, making the unfamiliar familiar. And that, in many ways, I want to turn it on its head, because people stay in their comfort zone, even though it's often very uncomfortable, because it is familiar. Yeah. And so I think as we move into this new era, a lot of it is about being prepared to be uncomfortable, to be comfortable with the unfamiliar, with what's different, with what's new. And when we are able to do that, we can move forward. And learning from the past, that's the value of it. That's what it's there for. And having learnt the lesson, then it is about letting go, forgiving self and or others, and recognizing that forgiving is not about condoning, and it's not about forgetting. So you can forgive even the most heinous things if you follow those principles, which is, if you can do, put it right. If it's you, if you can't, then learn the lesson and move on, having forgiven yourself. If it's other people, remember that holding on to that bitterness, that hurt, is like having a chain around your throat that keeps yanking you back. And that power that they had when they hurt you in whichever way, and I've worked with many abused people, that abuse was dreadful. However, you've survived, you are strong, and it's time to forgive that hurt, remembering it's not about condoning, it's not about forgiving, it's giving yourself the gift of freedom to move on. And I've worked with many people who had, terrible abuse as children, who for the first time in their life, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, have for the first time experienced the freedom that forgiveness gives.
Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. And you've mentioned so many of our words, and I've forgotten to tell our listeners. So let's do a little catch up. We had originally thriving.
Yeah.
You've also mentioned surviving.
Yeah.
And the other word we'll give right now is successful. I mean, it's amazing to me when I work with different clients what the definition of successful is, because success is so individual.
It is indeed.
And so is the next word. Actually, I'll give the next word as well, which is happiness. Mm. People say, "Oh, I just want to be happy." Well, happiness is a state of mind in the moment.
Isn't it
not a perpetual thing?
Yeah, but people make it so difficult. I call it the happiness when syndrome. Yeah. I'd be happy when I've got the perfect partner who never nags and doesn't leave the top off the toothpaste and, puts the toilet seat down. And I've got the perfect job, and I've got a big house, and I've got a wonderful car, and I've got children who don't need to be nagged to do their homework and tidy their room. And the problem with that,
can you imagine having that list of criteria? I'll be happy when? I mean, you never get there.
Well, as they meet the criteria, so they add more. Yeah. It's always in the future. A very different approach is I choose to be happy every time I see a friend, every time I have a hot shower, every time I have a great cup of tea, every time that I am out in the natural world. And so by choosing to be happy, and it is a choice, you can be in a challenging situation and you may not be happy about the situation, but I'm happy that actually I'm coping with it. I'm happy that there are people there to help. I am actively choosing to live my life in a happy way. And
I was just going to say, for me, you're describing fulfillment. I mean, I call the show The Edge of Fulfillment because so many people want to be fulfilled and don't realize that we are all standing on the edge of fulfillment, and we can choose it. We can have a little bit of courage and go beyond. And it is a choice. I love the way you put that, Gina. That was so, I hope that resonated for our listeners. And if it did, go ahead and put a yes, because remember, for every comment we put in there, we get an opportunity to give someone a day's worth of fresh water. And I didn't catch that. Can you put that back? Erica just said it raises
your vibration and the vibration of those around you.
Right.
And that's so important as we move into this new era of consciousness, where vibration, every emotion has a vibration.
Yes.
So anger, jealousy, fear all have low vibration. Gratitude, forgiveness, happiness, joy, love all have high vibration. And the more time you spend in those higher vibrations, not only will you feel so much better, but those vibrations spread out. And, if you've listened to Esther Hicks, for example, she talks about the vortex, the vibration that you have in your vortex is what you attract. So those people who, why am I so unhappy? Why am I poor? I don't want to be this. That's what's going into your vortex. Mm-hmm. But if you go and if you embrace the emotions of gratitude, of forgiveness, of love, those are high vibration. And you talk in terms of what you do want rather than what you don't want, then you will attract that into your vortex, and the quality of your life and the quality of the life of the people around you will improve immeasurably. It's your choice. It's your pattern, and you have the power to give yourself permission to be aware, to make that difference.
I love chatting with you, Gina.
Oh,
it's so inspiring. And fulfillment is our fifth word. So we have had all 5 words, and I'm encouraging people to put those 5 words in the chat and to really absorb what you've heard today and see how you can thrive, survive, feel happy and successful and fulfilled, because those are our 5 words.
I'll just say, in terms of fulfillment, being of service to others, making a positive difference in the world, to other people, to the environment, all of those things, again, raise the vibration and make such a positive difference.
And isn't that what, for me, what we're all here to do?
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah.
And the more opportunities that I have to do that, the better I feel.
I think so too.
So unfortunately, our time is at the end. So I'm pleased to notice on the ticker how people can contact you. Is there any other way that you would like to wrap up and just let people know how they can get in connect with you and contact with you?
Lots of resources available on genuinely-u.com. If you're interested in developing enlightened leadership, then it'll be enlightenedleadership.co. There's lots of training opportunities on ginagardinerassociates.co.uk. But the easiest way, if you're interested in anything, email me at Gina, Gina, at genuinely-u.com. And I'll be very happy to hear from you.
Oh, so awesome. And I want to thank you. And I also want to thank Roxy for putting up that
she's
link.
A star. Absolute star.
She is a star. Putting up that link to the quiz. What's the number one factor that can help you improve your satisfaction score? Your best life quiz is what I call it. And I want to thank you, Gina, and say that I am your host, Lorraine Lapointe. This has been The Edge of Fulfillment through Head Heart Synergy. And we just both like to remind you that at the edge, there is a choice. You can stay on the edge and always get what you've always got, or you can become courageous and move just beyond the edge and get what you really want. And we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.